South Sudan became a nation. So
really?
yeah, obviously far away from the border still, but yeah, memorable times, I would say.
Okay. So Dominic, what's going on?
Let's start.
All right. Can I start?
Yes, do start.
Well, hello everybody. My name is Tino Brömme. I'm meeting here today for the second edition of Kiron Talks, a new conversation format on YouTube, was been initiated by Dominic O, one of the participants, who is a research lead at Kiron Open Higher Education. He is joining us from Munich. Then we have Sabrina Konzok. She is a board member of SEND, the Social Entrepreneur Network Germany. And we have our special guest, Khalid O, who is also joining from Munich, international student from Bologna, from Sudan. We will know more about him in a moment, who will be our special guest in the question we are pursuing today, which is how do international students, how do they do, how do they live the moment with Corona, and well, what are the news in this field? Let's start to hear from everybody who he is. For example, Khalid, could you say 3 things about yourself so that we know who you are?
All right. So I'm Khalid, like you already said. I'm from Sudan. I did my bachelor's degree in electrical engineering in Sudan, and then I moved to Bologna to pursue a master's in electrical engineering as well. And then I've had the idea, or I've always aspired to study in Germany, especially in the university called TUM, Technical University of Munich. And I got the opportunity to do an Erasmus exchange here, so that's what I'm doing here currently. I started my 2nd semester exchange at TUM. Yes.
So, and what is the weirdest thing you can tell us about your being a student at the moment?
It was at the very beginning. So in Sudan, if you need to rent an apartment, you can just go to any real estate agent, give him your number, and he will keep persistently chasing you, sending you WhatsApp texts, giving you different offers, different prices, different sizes of rooms, everything. So I arrived in Italy, and I was expecting that I would get accommodation from the university, but unfortunately they ran out of rooms before they reached my name on the ranking list. So I thought, it's not a problem. How can it be to find a room? So I started going around to real estate agents, thinking that I would be able to do what you would usually do in Sudan, and that it didn't work out. I was around in hostels and Airbnbs for 3 months until I found the room. So I ended up living in almost every street in the city. So by the time I found the permanent residence, I knew the city very well. Like I had 4, 5, 6 different homes all around the city, north, south, west, everywhere.
So I can also confirm that Khalid is a great guide around the city, probably for that reason.
Yeah.
Well, it would be more polite. Would have been more polite for me to ask Sabrina first. So now it's your turn, Sabrina. Have you ever been an international student, and who are you anyway?
Yes, I've been for sure. So hi everyone, I'm Sabrina, and apart from being a board member at the Social Entrepreneurship Network, I also work at Kiron, and I'm responsible for strategic partnerships there. And I've been an international student actually twice. I did my master and I did a year abroad or a semester abroad, let's say so, in Singapore. So I just thought about it, what's the story? I would say Singapore is one of the nicest places I've ever been to because everything is super shiny and modern. And we also had the most astonishing student housing with an infinity pool across the yard, actually. So that's for sure the most posh way you can live. But although we had a very nice kitchen, we only had a microwave in there. So we weren't able to cook at all. And I remember we had an illegal toaster hidden somewhere, couldn't be found by anyone, so we could at least have some nice European breakfast there.
All right. And Dominic, you are already very, very old. So do you still remember being a student?
Yes, I remember being a student, and I was really thinking about, what have I thought about, being an international student, and I was thinking, for me, I was thinking the first time I ever met international students, because when I was young, which is a long time ago, I went up to London to study. In our course, we had some Chinese students, and they'd obviously come to London to study. We were doing business studies, and so they'd obviously come to study there. And I remember after they were very, very quiet, and it was the old type of the English university system where you really didn't have many exams through the year, right until the end. And then suddenly everything got very, very serious. And of course, then the Chinese students were very serious about this, while the rest of us were just, okay, it's the first year, we'll get through. But we had 3 Chinese students in our group, and they all failed because of their language competency. So they could speak pretty good English, but not good enough really to get through the exams. And I remember we all did a little kind of protest to say, oh, come on, we haven't supported them enough. Wouldn't it be great if they could go into the second year? Because that was the whole system. You had to do, if you didn't manage the first year, you had to repeat the whole first year again. But they repeated the first year.
Yeah.
So that was really kind of,
fascinating.
it was very interesting because it's such a long time ago, but it was already the first generations of international students traveling around.
Well, you still have kept in touch with students and universities in your line of work, just like myself, because I founded in my student times a European student journal in Italy, in France and Spain, and then later now I'm a journalist for higher education policy. So I'm still in my field, although I'm not a student. I'm still feeling very close to them, especially because I'm also looking into the news and I'm seeing what's going on with international students now. So they struggle, partly because they have to stay home, partly because they can't go home, partly because they don't have money. They can't earn money because all the short-term jobs are gone for the moment. And there are so many interesting moments there. The universities struggle to offer them the online opportunities to continue. They don't know how to design the next semester. And so there are a lot of open questions that are now circulating in the news. And we want to talk about, well, what is it now at the moment to be an international student? And, well, let's start with the one we have here at hand. Khalid, so you must be in a very, very dear situation and you are desperate, aren't you?
Yes, kind of, yeah. First of all, to the reasons you mentioned, part-time jobs now, restaurants, bars, they're all closed. So getting a job to be able to sustain yourself is very tricky at this point. A second thing is the universities themselves are not sure exactly how they should react. Or even if they have an idea how they should react, they still have a higher authority in their hierarchy that they need to negotiate with and ensure that they get an approval to do different things. And when you communicate with the university, all right, I need to know when the semester is going to start. Are you going to go switch to online? Are you not going to switch to online? They reply with, we're not sure yet. We need to think of it. And when you're already in a situation of panic and the person who's supposed to provide you with the answers can't provide you with it's not very pleasant. Yes. So this for me would be the biggest issue, is that the universities themselves in some are not sure exactly what's going to happen. And the exams are going to be held, the exams that have been already postponed. Yeah. So this mystery is not very favorable for us. Yeah.
So, but you are abroad from your place now, and is everything all right, or do you have any problems?
Yeah, I'm abroad. So I'm abroad from Sudan, from Italy to Munich. So yeah, one of the main problems is that, for instance, I started the semester, and I heard that people are considering that they may, from my university, that they might cancel the Erasmus exchange, for instance, and recall all their students, depending on how the other host universities react. So, for instance, if they see that the other universities don't have online classes, then why should they leave students there? So they might consider to recall students at some point. It's still not, I'm not saying that it's going to happen, but I personally think that this is something that I should keep in mind, that one day I might receive an email that, okay, Khalid, it's time, you have to come back to Italy. We decided to stop the Erasmus exchanges for this year, for instance. So this would be a huge cause of concern, because on the other hand, I have already started doing my thesis here, for instance. And if I go back, that means I have to start from scratch again.
Why?
Because I would probably another topic with another professor in University of Bologna, and yeah.
All right. Yeah. But Dominic, did you also look around a little bit? What this is the individual position of one international student. What do you know about the problems that the universities themselves have with the international students? Do you have a point here?
I mean, I think the main point is, as Khalid has said, that the universities are all working now to try and find solutions for all of their students. And the worry, I think, that Khalid is expressing is that there might be some kind of priority list. So you say, okay, well, first we deal with the students who really are enrolled in full programs at our universities, and then we get to the Erasmus students. That probably won't happen. But I think for sure there's insecurity. And of course, what we know about universities is they are not fully centralized organizations. So in fact, what we find probably in different faculties and in different schools, there'll be different experiences as well. So Khalid, you were also talking a little bit about the whole thing about depending on the subject area, it depends very much about whether it's being discussed of how easy it will be for them to go online. So I think...
I couldn't hear the last sentence.
Yeah, that's okay. We have to get used to this up sometimes. So I think...
yeah.
I was refer conversation we had just at the before this discussion with Khalid, and you were saying that some of the subject areas can move online than others. And have you been discussing that with your friends? You've probably got friends who are studying different subjects and being affected in different ways.
Yes. Yeah, for instance, well, I've come to see that, to find that people who study social sciences, business management, these things, I found it very easy to switch to online. It was very, very easy. You know, in fact, now that I come to remember saying this, is that at Zoom, the digital system for the Faculty of Management is much, much, much better compared to the one at the Faculty of Engineering. Because now when I come to think of it, when you look in the right, students who study management have these very nice screens, and all of their video, all of their lectures are already uploaded online and everything, even before the corona. Whereas in the Faculty of Engineering, the people who have the technology or develop the technology, we don't have this. So yeah, people with the studying social science type of switch to online very easily, unlike us, where we in some instances really need to be in a certain lab, use some particular equipment. Yeah, switching to digital, I think, could be impossible for some courses. And that's the case now. Some courses have been postponed from the summer semester up to the winter semester, because they know for sure that this course cannot be taught online.
And you were saying that you've also had some information from university where you're, of course, also enrolled. And you were saying yes, the situation there seems to be a bit different.
Yes. Yeah. Well, so since I'm enrolled in both universities, I get the communication from both universities. So first of all, from Bologna, I get a daily email, almost daily, particularly at the worst stage of the crisis in Italy. I get a daily email from the rector. Even if there is no solid information, just an email of reassurance that we are trying to do A, B, C, and 2, 3, 4 statistics about how they're switching online and so on and so forth. But I would say from this communication that the universities in Italy have switched to online learning so much faster, that this decision was made in Italy really fast, really early on. So very early on, you knew that, okay, yeah, they did this. And I don't even understand how they managed to buy all the cameras and all of this. The only thing I have in my head is that they already had the contingency plan planned way ahead that at some point we might switch to online. Whereas in Germany, it really took so much time. There was much less communication, I would say. And yeah, they gave us the decision of switching to online very, very late compared to Italy. Yeah, yeah, I'd say so.
I mean, I think one thing we don't know is, of course, you know, one thing we discuss probably every day at Kiron is, you know, what is quality in online learning? So, of course, you can switch to online learning and it can just be, okay, now you get a whole load of PDFs or you get an email every day telling you something, or you can have something really good. So we can't judge that now. But what I think is important is, I mean, you're an Erasmus student, but of course, if there are other students from developing economies, also from the Sudan, they're in quite precarious situations. And then if you're not getting good information about what's happening, that I imagine is a very difficult situation. Do you know of other people who haven't had the lucky chance of being able to go through Erasmus to get to the university in Munich, who are, for example, from Sudan?
I know one, and she actually got stuck in Sudan. So yes. So I think she went back at the end of March, and I remember that you said this. She was texting me like, "Hey, have you seen anything? Have you heard anything? What should I do? The airport in Germany is closed. I don't know what to do." Yeah, exactly. That happens for sure. But luckily, at least she was with her parents, so that kind of made the situation better. But yes, not knowing when the semester is going to start, if there will be some deadlines that they start, or sometimes here you have to sign up for certain courses on not just online. You have to actually come to the first class. So missing the first class means you can't enroll. So you lose your chance of taking this subject. So of course, yeah, that was very worrisome, and it feeds back to what we said earlier, that yes, that such information, such as the calendar dates, if they're going to be modified or whether they're going to be the same as they were before the corona started, that these type of ambiguities, yes, were a huge cause of concern. Yeah, for instance, for this girl, yeah, in this case. Yeah.
Well, this crisis also with the restrictions to mobility and the restrictions for your ability to work and do things shows a lot of things. I mean, it shows, for instance, that how internationally networking universities are, how internationalizing they are for society, and what money plays a role there. I think education cannot be resolved only in the focus of the online education or not, but it's a broader range. And well, I think the financial aspect is interesting. I mean, the universities themselves. Dominic sent me this article by Alex Usher where he is like lamenting the Australian university's a disaster with not having the income of the international tuition fees now. Does it show that universities are like hospitals that need to be mostly public to assure that this essential multicultural service to society stays in place? Or what does it show? I mean, well, what do you think?
Yeah, I absolutely think that they should be free. I fully support this, and this is one of the reasons why I like Germany. First of all, let me tell you about something, a different part of the story. So in Italy, in every province, there is something called the Agendia Diritto di Studio. Probably you might, yes. So the agency for the right to higher education. So in Italy, yeah, you have to pay for university. It's not as expensive as the UK, US, or Australia, where you have to pay 20,000 per year. But still, what they do is that they assess your economic background, and based on your economic background, they give you benefits, whether it's a reduction in the tuition fees or scholarship and so on and so forth. So yes, I think that public universities and educational facilities should be something that anyone, irrespective of their economic background, they should access. Of course, on the side, if someone has really has a lot of money and wants to send their kids off to a private university, yes, there should be access to that. But the state should be able to provide a decent education, yes, a higher education, not just the basic high school education. Yep.
If we go back to No, go on, Tino.
Yes, Dominic,
Yes.
what do you think about it?
Or you want to ask me? No, I want to ask Khalid something first, because I'd like to set something a bit in context. So, Khalid, you were at the University of Khartoum.
Yeah.
And did you have to pay fees at that university, or did some of the students have to pay fees?
Yeah, in my case, I did have to pay. So the system there works like this. They have a certain entrance grade you need to get. So for instance, to study electrical engineering, you need to score 94% in your high school leaving certificate. If you score below that, that doesn't mean they won't give you access to the university, but that means you have to pay extra. You have to pay, you have to pay tuition fees. So if you get 94% or higher, you go in for free. If you can go in, but you have to compete for 25% of the seats. So if the class has 100 people, 75% must attain 94% or higher. And the other 25% is like the private part of the university. But still, we all study in the same class. So it's the same institution that hosts people who pay and hosts people who study for free.
Yeah. And the fee that these students are paying, who are paying their full fee, how expensive is that? So compared to, I don't know, how affordable is that for somebody in the Sudan?
For someone in Europe, it's completely affordable. Someone in Sudan, yeah, it could be a lot of money if you are from a low-income family. Yeah, it would be very. Would be very expensive. And the other thing is that it differs greatly between field and field. So medicine and engineering are in very high demand. That's why medicine is very, very expensive. Engineering, relatively, whereas social sciences are kind of marginalized in Sudan, though they're quite cheap. So it would be easy to find a bachelor's degree, a course in literature or something.
Oh, God.
It's not a smart. It's an unfortunate thing, but
I mean, part of it is also to do with how much it costs to offer those places. So sometimes when you get to those fees, it's also based on, okay, then you have to, those fees should fully self-finance tuition seat, and that's why you get these differences. But what I always find interesting is on the first hand, so this concept is called dual tuition fee, or dual track tuition fee schemes. So we have them in most countries of the world. We also have it in China. We have it in a lot in Europe. We don't have it in Germany. You're right. In other countries, quite a lot of the Western European countries, we don't have it, but we have, as you said, Khalid, kind of hidden fees, which are things like student surcharge and things like that. So we don't notice it's a fee. But the interesting thing I always think is then, if you get to the situation that you come from one of these and you're trying to get into the elite university and you don't get this high score, then there's quite a large incentive to go to another country where, for example, you go to Germany, you've got very high costs living in Germany, but you don't have the tuition fee. And normally you have the chance to work alongside your studies. So there is some kind of, I think, I've never done it, probably Khalid, you can tell more about it, but I think there is a bit of a kind of a calculation made by students. So one reason they're thinking of going abroad is they're thinking, okay, so I'm going to get a certificate or a degree which has got more reputational value, and it costs more than if I'd have been a high scorer, but I'm not a high scorer. So in a way, this whole thing seems to work, but it's created a system now where the student often is either highly dependent on money coming from their parents, or they have to be able to work alongside their studies. And then on the other hand, you've got the universities, which have partly become totally dependent on this group of students. And this is what you're talking about, Tino, with the case in particularly countries like Australia, but in this case also Canada, the UK. Many of these countries, they're like, okay, well, without the international students, we just don't have. So there's a whole kind of complex ecosystem playing a role there. But so on the basis.
fascinating. This is fantastic. I like that. I like that. You see, that shows that money shouldn't be the decisive factor for everything. But we have another problem that is more serious than money, and it's one of the two you wanted to go to in this conversation. That is, how necessary is it for being an international student to go to the place, right? Of course, Khalid can only answer one thing: you must go. But still, the question is open. Is it how and what does it mean if you can't? What does it mean if you can? How important is that? I mean, I think that the technical possibilities seem to show that it's not necessary. But does this really mean that it's not necessary? How will our education and idea of being a student not be totally different one without the movement? What do you think?
I have a question that might put things into more perspective. Are distant learning courses valued the same as on-campus courses?
Depends on the school and the faculty and the degree and everything.
Let's say not take it from the education institution's perspective. Let's take it from the employer's perspective. If I apply for a company and if someone else applies for a company, one with an online certificate and one with the same program but on campus, who has the most likely chance of being accepted? You cannot
generalize. You cannot generalize it. I was in a car with a guy working for a machine producing company. He was not a university student in the first place. He was just like a craftsman, but he had a good job. And he was financing his own master's student in an evening course online. And this was already 15 years ago to advance in his company. So in his case, the online course was totally fine for him to serve his purpose. While you cannot generalize this. I think this depends on is the education expert here.
Well, I would like to pass to Sabrina because I think she would like to make a comment.
Okay.
For sure. No, I mean, we're all feel somehow, right? But what I feel, because I've done both as well, right? So I've done several online courses or like micro degrees, as you would call it now. And I also did the international student experience twice. So I would say, I mean, why would you choose one over the other? Like, it's total different reasons why you do it, I guess. So in one hand, why someone values an international student experience more than maybe an online degree comes down to the fact that you didn't only learn the content, right? You learned how to behave in a different setup, in a different academic setup, and find your way around a different culture, right? So that whole skill of international competency and, you know, being able to deal with people that don't come from your bubble where you grew up. I mean, that's a skill in itself. Whereas I feel if it's really about the knowledge, then maybe it matters a bit less, because I truly believe that you can attain knowledge from wherever. And that's a big benefit again as well, right? Because I did, for example, a course in humanitarian diplomacy, and there are very, very, very few universities in this world that would offer such a course, right? Because it's so specific. And I wouldn't have wanted to move to Malta for that, to be honest, although it's a super nice place.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there is always something about being abroad. In fact, I mean, when I always think about how did I, you know, I don't think I said at the beginning I'm British, but I'm living in Germany. How did I get to Germany? It was really during my first studies. I met a few people who were studying a combination of language and business, which meant they went abroad. And one time I went abroad to visit them, and we were in Spain. It's such a great experience. I'd like to have this experience. And I think this is the kind of thing I've been trying to do also through my career. It's just, and now, always having these experiences. But of course, what we know is that only a certain number of people can actually do this kind of, have this opportunity. So even if we're thinking about, you know, Germany at the moment, we don't really have tuition fees for students, even for foreign students. So we try and be very open at that. Still, only certain people are able to travel like that. And so it is always interesting to think about the question of what can you do through digital learning. But of course, what we're learning at the moment, and that's why I think we all have to look at what's happening in Khalid's picture. Of course, you're always then in some weird setting which you control. So you seem to be in some kind of garage or something there.
I'm in my winter garden.
Nice.
That's what it is, right? Okay.
That's super nice.
But I mean, so you can kind of travel in a certain way through the way we're doing it now. We're all in different locations. We're having this exchange, but the physical exchange is always somehow something important as well. And I think it's hard to capture through online, but if we can,
what do you mean?
We can make it more open for more people.
Well, Dominic, this is a more complex question, actually. I mean, I think that the European Union is not such a bad idea, and exactly now we see that physical mobility restricted, that certain things are not so easy, not possible anymore, right? And this puts into question this whole idea, which is a community that interacts well physically, also dealing with the problems of having the other person behaving in a certain way and learning how it's to another culture, that you don't need so much except for the conversational skills when you are online. The fantastic advantages of talking now together and with Khalid, or even if he would be in Sudan with a decent online connection, that is, of course, an exciting and new technology and possibility offered to us. But does this mean that the mobility? No, the question would be: COVID-19. How will mobility be considered, and how will it develop? No, and how can this be compensated, at least partly, through these interesting online educational systems?
Yeah, I think that's really.
I think Khalid is frozen on the screen.
He's fine for me.
Khalid?
You were.
I can hear
Khalid,
you.
Can you?
I can hear you. Yes.
No,
yes,
it's good. It's good. I just wanted to throw in one thing.
Well,
We can hear you as well, Tino. Very well.
Okay, it's good. All right.
I just wanted to throw in something
Khalid,
from this morning. There's a website in Europe which is used by a lot of students to search for new programs that they'd like to take. So it's as an online portal. It's called Study Portals, and they've set up a dashboard now with information about how students, or also possibly their parents, are looking about what are the study opportunities in Europe in bachelor and master's level. And they were showing, on the one hand, the first graphic was showing the number of searches compared to this time last year is down significantly. But more interestingly, they showed the number of searches for online programs is massively up. And this is very interesting. So it's interesting, what kind of situation are we in now? Is it the case that people are now more open for studying online? Is this a kind of an emergency or panic reaction now, which says that's the only way to get started? Or is this really a change in behavior, or is it just something temporary? I think none of us really know now, but maybe with so many of us having to deal with kind of online opportunities, maybe there is some kind of trend happening.
Well, the crisis, the epidemic will pass, so that will normalize in a certain way. But we will make now very particular experiences, and the emergency will create special new ways to teach and to learn, and for instance, to make projects like these European universities, who are really trying to build networks where these common learning experiences are more strongly in the focus, where study programs and degrees are designed through this technology, so that problems that couldn't have been faced or tackled before now can be approached. Let's say different places, researchers from different places, even different strata of society, like the cities or the companies, who now can get in involved in a certain communication they before wouldn't have felt the need to do so. Well, Khalid, I suppose you are just forced now to use online means. How do you feel about it?
In some ways, like you said earlier in our earlier conversation, yes, it is definitely more comfortable, more relaxed. Because at least, let's say you take 45 minutes. If you're in Munich, you take 45 minutes to get almost everywhere. That saves a lot of time for you. That hassle. Moreover, you don't have to worry about how you look when you meet someone or anything, because you can just wear a suit and you wear a jacket and you look good. So in some ways, yeah, it's easier. On the other hand, I would say that face-to-face interaction and being with your professor. So in my case, I was supposed to be sitting in the lab doing my thesis. So doing from the computer in the lab, where I would have my prof next to me. So I would see him on a daily basis. Thus, we would interact on a daily basis. But here now, I would have to either have like a whole and then email him for a weekly meeting, or because it's not so easy to get in touch with the professor on a day-to-day basis online. We can, we text on Teams. Yeah, there are some softwares that enable this, but still, I don't think it's as easy as when we are both in the same office.
Yeah, you have to over-communicate a lot more, right?
Yeah.
Because all the like informal talks or like question in between that would really help you won't happen, right? Just by itself.
Not just that, I would also have other research staff around me if I was at the university. I chat with other PhD students working in the department. So now we lack this. So now all of my contact is just with the professor. So I think in some ways working from home in this type of situation could be a disadvantage.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you that actually. How your connection is with other students on your course, because it could be that could have got stronger, but you're suggesting, at least in your situation, it's actually the opposite. There's less chances to communicate.
Yeah, actually, yeah. Especially in my case, since I'm not taking any courses, I'm just doing the thesis currently. So at the moment, I have almost no connection with any following the same degree program as I am. Yes. But on the other hand, if we were on the on Microsoft Teams, for instance, taking the same lectures, yes, you would have the bar on the side, and people would be able to write comments just as we can here in YouTube. But I'm not sure if I think it's the same as still all of us being in the same class and seeing the professor in front of us. I think have a different feel to it. And it's also something I said to Tino earlier about all of the students trying to pull tricks on their professors now, pretending to watch the lectures and when they're just sleeping, with the frozen screen of themselves or an image of themselves on the webcam.
Just like in a real classroom, right?
I wanted to ask.
Well, students are by nature lazy, so they accept, they embrace everything that keeps them from working. This is their inner nature to be lazy. So they must be very happy now, of course, that they don't need to come, they don't need to show up, they can stay at home. No, everything is delivered to them.
This is the Humboldtian ideal. You're only spending all your time with contemplation and how to change the world. You don't need a lecture for that. I think that's maybe the other way to see it.
No. I want to be serious.
I know you would.
I'm sorry. I want to be.
No, but what I've been thinking, and I mean, that's something we have to keep in mind as well, right? Like I read that article. It was actually related to home office, right? And someone said, I mean, what we're doing right now, at least for companies who haven't done it before, right? This is not home office. This is like dealing with a crisis situation, right? And I feel that's maybe also what's right now happening with all those classes, right? If you haven't had the system in place, like some had, but some haven't had before. So if you haven't had that system in place before, that's also not really online learning. That's trying to teach online and learn online in times of crisis, right? So because if now maybe, God forbid, but this goes on for longer and you would have to think through the next semester, then maybe we could find ways, you know, to match you with your peers, that you actually, you know, get to know the other students or the other PhDs as well, and you can really interact, because that's what's lacking right now, right? Because you've never met maybe, so you don't even know whom to contact. And there are all like workarounds, but I think that's a real challenge right now, that it's just not a normal status where you just put stuff in an online sphere, but it's really like a crisis mode.
Yeah, I think that's important, and I think it's also the fact that actually the real challenge is normally when you're thinking of a digital setting or a digital environment, you really have to plan everything, because otherwise, you know, you would actually meet people by chance by going onto the campus and then going to a cafe or going to the library, and suddenly you've got some act. But in a digital setting, it all has to be in a certain way planned to actually replicate that. But the interesting point is, in a way, that some of these things that we might begin to be experimenting with can solve some of the problems that we've had anyway. So one of most international students say about how difficult it is to be abroad is they say it's really hard to meet students from the country they're studying in. And so that problem is there even whether we're at home or not. You know, even in an open campus, you still have that problem. So maybe that's those are the kind of things we can focus on a bit.
Yeah, I would actually love that, because I hate that as well, that only not you, Khalid, have to say something about being an international student. But in Amsterdam, I actually lived in a flat with 16 other people, and none of them was Dutch. So that's a true challenge. And then obviously you also study in English, because it's an international master. And then you have real trouble to try and get some Dutch and try and meet more Dutch people, right? Totally. It's an easier workaround if you can have more online meetings or meetups or whatever.
Well, this is very optimistic. The alienation from the international students towards their host country is already, as you said, on the campus a problem, which has to do with many factors, not only with the certain coolness that Germans and Dutch people have, but also like for the natural ways where you go, how you behave, and so on, and that you maybe don't cross in the same interests, no? But I think these online teaching systems that we are setting up now can only partly mediate these problems. This cannot. Well, the best thing I know is that you combine it. I mean, if there's not a total restriction of movement, but a partial restriction, then the best ways of working with online media and on digital teaching is the combination. You can have a meeting around a table, even in COVID times, where people have a certain distance, and you use, like you do in television shows, people can participate by putting input, and people can invite someone in who's somewhere else. And there's still, and I think the best online teaching formats that we have are the let's say flexible ones, not the ones where of course the teacher is a teacher and he has prepared well and he has his materials to bring the material through the minds of the students, but where also the interaction is organized in an intelligent way. That's your profession also, Dominic, no? To look how can this interaction be organized intelligently, so that that everybody benefits and it doesn't become just a drag, like sometimes it seems, how Sabrina says, when we just have to go through the material and then this is just an emergency solution.
Yeah.
But we are close to the end of our time, so maybe each of you would make a prognosis of how this will be in a few months from now. I would be very curious about your opinions. Or is it asked too much? Well, I'm optimistic, I can tell you.
Okay, then maybe you can start.
What?
Okay, I think that's what he's saying, that he's optimistic. So I'm actually also optimistic about experimentation, because it occurs to me that you know, I've lived outside of the UK for I think over 25 years. We've started Zooming with my family now. We never did before, so we never did any kind of video conferencing all those years, and suddenly we're doing it now as a family. So something changes.
You know you have relatives.
Now I know what they look like again.
Yeah.
No, it's not that extreme.
Oh yeah, that's a good experience. And you, Sabrina, what's
that's the key of what I would wanted to say as well about that, because I'm super positive that the challenge might turn out to be a very big opportunity, right? That people lose the fear of being online and also like learning online, obviously, like meeting family and doing home office and I don't know what, like in all kinds of walks of life. Because what usually holds us back, I mean, we're all just humans, right? It's like the psychology behind it. So if people like see, okay, it's actually not that different, and maybe the students who have been lazy before, they will also be lazy online, right? But then in the end, like if you push yourself maybe a bit more and you find some more motivational trigger that overcome all the hurdles that come with learning online, then it can actually be a very big benefit and can make it possible to learn something, although you can't be in a classroom together. So that's what I'm hoping, kind of.
Khalid, you have the last word, because supper is waiting for me, and I will be killed if I don't arrive in a few minutes.
Okay, yeah. Like Sabrina and Dominic said, this hardship people, let's force people to try out, people who would have never tried a Zoom call or a Zoom meeting. So I think after the pandemic, some people will see it as still an advantage to continue that way. So that's one thing. So I think after the coronavirus, there will still be a lot more online teaching, a lot of more people doing home office. And on the other hand, I think when we are more relaxed and all of the anxiety from the virus is gone, I think people will really be able to sit down and find solutions, very innovative solutions to apply these, to really make, to take digital learning to the next level.
Totally.
Well, that's great. Khalid, I will come back to you very soon for another online interview. And Sabrina, this format, as you yourself found it, wants to go on and wants to come